Welcome back to the show, guys. And today's theme is about authenticity and fully living in it. And our guest pretty much embodies this on all levels. He's an incredible media strategist, consultant, owner of a fantastic business out of New York City. And his name is Tyler Mount. I had Tyler out for an event that I hosted in San Francisco a few years ago. He lit up the stage, was an absolute crowd favorite. We've maintained a great relationship and friendship going forward. But what I love most about him is how he is unapologetically himself. And today's episode is really about that. He talked about how staying within that space has helped lead him to more business opportunities, helped him work through very difficult challenges in his life. And he's here to share all that with us today. So enjoy the show, guys. Tyler, thank you so much, brother, for taking some time today to jump on this with me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, brother. I want to jump right into the concept of not fitting in. I've heard you give keynotes all over the country, and your story and where you started in Texas and how not fitting in was basically like the foundation for everything for you.
Yeah. So, I grew up in super small town Texas, Montgomery, Texas, to be exact. At the time, 300 people, one stoplight. And, I lived in a bubble. I lived in a very small town. And consequently, I thought it was normal to feel the way I felt, which is almost like an outcast. I didn't feel like I fit there. I felt like I didn't belong there, not because I was necessarily bullied or I didn't have supportive parents. That wasn't the case. I just always felt like inherently I was called for something greater. And that is a through line that's really carried me through my entire life, both personally and professionally. And so ultimately, I knew I wanted to leave Montgomery as quickly as I could. I went to school in Austin, which is a beautiful little liberal island in the sea of Texas red. I felt like I started to find my people. I went there and pursued a degree in theater. And then for as long as I can remember, probably since second grade, third grade, I knew I was going to live in New York City. The sky is blue, grass is green, Tyler belongs in New York City. And so right after graduation of college, quite literally the next week or two, I relocated to New York City, where I've been now for 13 years.
For people that are listening to this, that maybe feel at whatever stage they're at in their entrepreneurial or working or professional journey, even students that don't feel like they fit in, what do you say to them? Because your journey was similar.
Yeah, I say learning from experience and having coached some of the more prolific thought leaders and entrepreneurs in our space, I would say to fight against your instinct, which is to be quiet and assimilate. Instead, my answer is always to scream authentically, even louder, because that's how we find our tribe, right? My tribe cannot find me unless I am raising my hand, screaming, this is who I am. And so my goal is to not be quiet and sit in the corner and fit in. My goal is to say, this is who I am unapologetically, and then your community and tribe surrounds you. And this is the case with every single person on earth, no matter who you are, no matter how you identify, no matter what you like to do, no matter what you don't like to do. There are people who also feel the same way and will surround you both physically and, metaphorically in life. And that is the real joy. Community is the joy. And we only get there by being unapologetic and saying who we are and asking for friends to surround us.
Yeah, and not, just sticking to the status quo, right? I mean, you've taken a lot of chances in your entrepreneurial journey to get to where you're at. Like you didn't get there by playing it safe or, doing what you've already talked about, which was going against the rhythm of what was expected for you. But talk to me about taking chances and maybe some examples of a recent chance you took and how it's paid off, and maybe a chance that you took that didn't pay off.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a good bio. It's great, to read it, but that bio is the tip of the iceberg, and what's under the water and under the surface is a absolute mammoth mountain of failure, right? And it's easy to compare someone's highlight reel to your understanding of who you are really day in, day out. And so to answer that question, I would say my career in general was a massive chance. I knew that I was going up against insurmountable odds in terms of pursuing not only a degree, but a professional life in live theater. You can imagine it is one of the most saturated, the most competitive, even more so than real estate. Can you believe it? And even when you make it, you are not making good money, right? If you are working on Broadway 52 weeks a year, which is unheard of, okay? Unheard of. You're barely bringing home $110,000 before taxes, before you pay your manager, before you pay your agent, and before you live in the single most expensive city in the world. I said that I have always believed that joy is the compass to success. And if I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, I'm going to do something else. Not because I think that's always the fastest way to get rich, but I know it's the most fun way. And the idea that I can't become financially and culturally successful by doing what I love is a misnomer. And so what I said was, I'm going to relentlessly pursue this, not because it's a chore, but because I love it. And I did find some quite significant success in the Broadway world, in the Broadway space, both as a stage manager, production assistant, and now as a theatrical producer. And so that was a huge chance that has paid off dividends when I bet on myself. Now, obviously, we could sit here and talk all day about the 500 failures that I typically don't talk about because it's not as glamorous or sexy.
Right. And you, on the topic or on that thread of fucking up, you have a new keynote that you've been putting together. And I love listening to you speak. And if you are listening to this podcast and you've had the privilege, because it really is, to get to hear this guy on stage and the energy that he brings, it's amazing. But I haven't gotten to hear this new keynote that he's talking about because I'm one of his biggest fans. So talk to me about that and why that is so relevant right now in 2025 for anyone that's working through this economy, because things are only going to get harder.
Yeah. So I hear every single day in my work about failure. I hear about lost contracts, lost followers, lost friends, lost family, lost deals. And a lot of the times we let these things really define us. And there are things we can control and there are things we can't. A buyer pulling out of a deal almost always is out of your control. Okay. And letting that impact our mood or our ability to do the next deal is really prohibitive for long-term success. And it's easy, like I said at the beginning of today's conversation, on paper, to be like, well, Tyler has achieved X, Y, and Z in his life. Okay. The same thing we could say about you or any other noted entrepreneur. Okay. But it isn't until I stand on stage and say, actually, guys, look at my flaming trash heap of failure. Okay. And look what I still have done despite that. Right. And so in this keynote, I talk about loss in our industry, and then I talk about what we can do to combat it. Okay. We talk about specifically my personal losses, my business losses, my financial losses. Okay. And then we talk about real black and white action items on how we fix it. We talk about how can we track losses to further our business. Well, we have to have a CRM. We have to have foundational support to be able to track our wins and our failures. How do we continue to stop losing followers, to stop losing eyeballs on our content? Well, it's producing consistently authentic related content, right? How do we show up authentically without all of these filters, both metaphorically and quite literally as well? And so we walk through failure in our industry and the ways that we can embrace failure, combat it, and grow stronger because of it.
Now, when it comes to social media, which is something that you're a huge thought leader in, a lot of your keynotes all tie back to it. How does someone take, because we all think that social media is just about all the wins, right? But you're talking about failures and fuck ups and where it's not worked out really well. How do we celebrate that or honor that within social? And why do you feel that that's really important, of actually taking those things and letting the world kind of see that this was in pieces for you or that it was a little bit ugly?
Yeah. I think number one is that it ties back to the golden rule of social media, which is people are there for access and they're there for relatability, right? We are here to get a glimpse into the life of someone else. Maybe it's a celebrity and we're never going to fly on a private jet and we want to know what that feels like. Okay. Maybe it's someone who is incredibly fit and it dedicates their entire life to fitness. Okay. And we don't, right? What I find is by focusing on human focused, relatable content, we will always succeed because for the 1% of people who have achieved the same thing that you have, okay, there's 99% of people who feel like an utter failure based on multiple areas of their life. I have felt like a failure in every aspect of my life at some point, right? You have too. And so what we also start to find is when we find the commonality between humans, that is when real social growth happens, right? I have lost significant deals to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit straight to my bank account, okay? That is devastating. But guess what? Yeah, you have too, okay? You've lost a deal and you've lost millions of dollars of deals, okay? I have lost millions of dollars of deals, okay? That is part of this, right? And by just talking about the wins, it makes it seem like the other person has something wrong with them. When in reality, we're just here showcasing a really, I'll say, narrow-minded approach to what being a human is. So talking about your personal struggles, talking about your romantic struggles, talking about your financial struggles, talking about your business struggles, okay? There's always a time and a place, but I find that finding the commonality between the human experience, which is rooted in many things, one of them being failure, is always the place to start.
Well, with a recent fuck up, aside from like losing deals, is there one in particular that comes to mind? Maybe it's not so recent that you feel talking about it right now, or even just referencing it high level would be really helpful for others to hear about?
I could list many of them, okay? And some of them feel a little first world today, but I will talk about my most recent show that I'm producing on Broadway, okay? And it's a show called Oh Mary. It is a cultural sensation, okay? It's selling really well. From a box office perspective, it's a hit, okay? From a critical response, it's a hit, okay? And I've been very fortunate in my career to have a really good track record. The shows I help co-produce oftentimes win the Tony. Okay. And I am a decorated, theatrical producer because of it. I'm very thankful for that. But I oftentimes, AKA always, ascribe my worth to the amount of awards I get. When in reality, there are so many different reasons, myself included, as to why we produce theater, right? A story that needs to be told potentially, right? Underrepresented group of individuals in the show or speaking to a group of underrepresented individuals, right? And we just got off Tony season. Tony's was, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We were predicted to win. Every single publication knew that Oh Mary was winning. And ultimately we didn't, right? We didn't win. And am I gonna move on? Yes. Have I already moved on? Yes. Do I still have 3 Tonys sitting in my living room? Yes. Is it a first world problem? Yes. But there was a moment of, I'll be honest, disappointment, dare I say despair, because in that moment, it felt like when I had no control over it, was a failure. And I was gonna have to go back to people and tell them the truth. And the truth was, I didn't win. And I'm not as good as they think that I am. And then I start going, like so many humans do, in this slippery slope fallacy, which is, and I'm ugly, and I'm a loser, and I have no right owning a company, much less a real estate, advisory firm. Who's going to want to work with me? They did just confirm that I am a loser, and it just snowballs, right? And you've experienced this. I guarantee it. Every person listening has had a failure and then had that indirectly inform how good or bad they are as a human being or as a professional or as a partner or many other things. And so that is a perfect example of how, what an incredible opportunity to say like, oh yeah, I was nominated for a Tony this year, right? No one here is like, oh, what a loser. But I'm over here being like, I'm a pile of trash. Please get me out of here, right? And that is a beautiful use case about how I and everyone on this earth oftentimes feels imposter syndrome. And by speaking about it and having an open dialogue, it makes me more relatable, and it potentially helps someone else feel not alone.
Do you have a framework, Tyler, that you use? Because obviously failures are not a matter of if they happen, it's when, right? We're going to continually have them. And I know everyone has their own formula for, when something bad happens, I give myself X number of minutes to grieve it, and then I have to turn the page and move on. Like, do you have a framework that you use? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious, but I imagine you probably have something you subscribe to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the thing that I talk about every single time is quite simple. Okay. My answer is I am unapologetic when it comes to pursuing and asking for what I want. Okay. And so when I go for something and it doesn't happen, whatever it is, I know that there's always going to be a next opportunity. But the thing that I love doing is a fantastic, super simple psychological m- mind hack. Okay. And it's this: in life, so many times, fear kills our ability to succeed, right? Because we don't even try. And so, one of my favorite authors of all time, a woman named Jen Sincero, she wrote a really popular book from like 5 to 6 years ago called You Are a Badass. It swept the, self-help genre by storm. And I'm low-key obsessed with this woman. She changed my life. She wrote my Bible, basically. Okay. And she speaks to this idea of the power of fear and its ability to kill magic instantly or potential. And so what I do is anytime I am going up against something that seems new or scary or out of my comfort zone, or I'm going to venture outside of what I'm comfortable with, I always just say, I just want to see if, right? And it releases all of this pressure we put on ourselves. Arjun, imagine the difference in saying, I need to do $10 million in contracts this month, or I am going to be homeless, right? Versus, you know what? Let me see. Let me just see, honestly. Let me just see if I really commit to doing social content and reaching out to my CRM. Let me see if I could do 10 million this month. Same end goal. One is fear-based and makes your entire month miserable. And the other is fun and seems like a challenge. And guess what? You have nothing to lose. And so I play this game with myself and my team all the time. I'm like, yeah, our goal is X number of, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars per month. Okay. I go, I just want to see if, hear me out, guys. I just want to see if maybe what if we hit 7 figures in revenue this month? Let me just see. Let me just see. And you would be so surprised how much better your life becomes when you allow yourself to try. And this goes to even your personal life. Imagine if instead of sitting at the bar alone, you said, you know what? I don't know any of these people here. I will never see them again. I just want to see what would happen if I talked to that cute person at the end of the bar. You know what I mean? It opens our ability. So that is how I combat and work through fear that has been instilled in us from a young age because of failure, because I just want to see.
Why not, right? And in the spirit of that, with your this kind of persevering spirit that you've got, which is just like, let me just take a chance. What is something that you're doing right now that maybe you're a bit afraid of, but you're like embarking on, and it's either going on, maybe you might not be allowed to talk about it. So I understand if it's that important, but tell me about something that is going well where these same principles in reverse are being applied.
Yeah. So, look, I am a crazy person because I'm an entrepreneur. You're a crazy person because you're an entrepreneur. But I am finally at a place after paying my dues and getting really specific on who I am and what I do and why I'm here on this earth. Okay. That my business is now doing really well. Okay. I obviously have gone through periods as I was getting started. I was like, I don't know how I'm making payroll. We always did. Okay. But I'm like, I don't know how we're making payroll. I don't know how this new legal bill is going to get paid. Okay. And I would defer my payment. Like, we always found a solution, but like, that is not a good place to be. Okay. I am now at a place where I'm like, if God forbid, 20% of my clients went away tomorrow, I'd still be fine. Okay.
Amazing.
And that is, I would say that is a testament of me showing up consistently. Okay. And the thing that I would say that I'll tell you secretly, that you can air and tell everyone, because it's not going to be a secret by the time this airs, that after a lot of thought, okay, I have decided to make the biggest business transition of my life. And the closest people in my life know this, but like, not a lot of people, but I have decided to relocate the business I'm going to relocate the business from New York City to Austin, Texas. And I'm going to do that for two reasons. Number one, no state tax. You know what I mean? I am getting absolutely brutally slaughtered sitting in Manhattan, running a corporation and paying state and city tax and a franchise tax.
And it might get worse.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like,
it might get worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, look, I can ensure the integrity of the business by doing this. And also, you know what, Arjun? I have been staying here, not because I need to, but because of ego. I've been staying here because if I leave, that means I'm a failure. Do you see the trend here? If I leave, that means I failed. When in reality, it's like, no, I like came and mopped the floor. And now you know what I want? I make enough money that I want to be comfortable. And you know what I want?
Keep it.
Yes, I want to keep it. I want a penthouse. And you know what else I want? I want to be able to go somewhere without a crackhead smoking crack on the subway. You know what I mean? And if that is Austin, Texas, great. And you know what? For the amount of money I am going to make there overnight, exclusively because of tax savings, I could fly to New York City first class and stay at the Aman every single month and still make money, right? So that is something that is big and scary and ethereal. But like, I have always, 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 always trusted my gut, and it has always led me correctly. And I feel pulled to Austin, and I don't know why.
Home.
Yeah,
You're going home.
you know,
yeah.
Back to Texas. So it feels really, really good, and it's not like Austin is some podunk town. It's like a hub of art and science and culture and everything that I live for.
Capital too. I mean, so many funds are relocating there. Like, it's becoming an epicenter of a lot of things.
Yeah,
that are major to the U.S. economy. Well, good for you, and for everyone that's on this podcast and in the audience, you just got some really exclusive news,
top secret gossip
from one of the best entrepreneurs I know. And look, what he's built in New York, he's kind of brushing over it lightly, and he's not here to brag about himself, but what he's built is a pretty remarkable business and enterprise over there. And now it's transferable. And that's something that we all aspire to, is to build up something that can transfer elsewhere, and we're not pinned to where we're at. Tyler, what, in your opinion, is what holds most entrepreneurs back? I think when we talk about fear, that could be definitely something. But if there's something outside of that, because you work with such big brands and so many companies, and whether they're solopreneurs or they are entrepreneurs of huge organizations, is there something consistent that you see that's holding people back in 2025 and going beyond?
So this is what I would say. The difference between someone who I find to be an incredibly successful entrepreneur and entrepreneur with potential, but a lack of quote unquote traditional success, is their ability to be unapologetically themselves. And I know that's a little ethereal, so let me explain. How many times have we seen a real estate agent, for example, dress a certain way because that's how real estate agents dress? How many times would I say that if one of my founders, okay, were going into a boardroom with billionaires, right, to pitch their new product for investment, they would wear a suit and tie because that's what they feel like they need to do. I have learned growing up trying to hide who I was in order to appease strangers that I was no longer doing that. And so one of my superpowers that I try to instill with everyone is that I am Tyler no matter who you are. And so the Tyler that Arjun gets is authentically the Tyler that his best friends get, that his romantic partner gets, that the billionaire in the boardroom gets, right? And believe me, I have stood in the room with billionaires and pitched businesses for my clients, have pitched my business, right? And I am unapologetic in terms of how I look, how I dress, and how I act. Because at the end of the day, if you don't want to work with that, I totally get it. I am not offended at all. But then you just don't want to work with me, right? Because you can think about it logically, right? No matter who you are, there are people who don't want to work with you. Arjun, people don't want to work with you because you're a man. There are people who don't want to work with you because you're not white. There are people who don't want to work with you because you live in California, this, horrific liberal state. There are people who, do want to work with you because you're in California. People do want to work with you because you're not white, right? What I'm trying to paint a picture of, and we could do this for every person. People don't want to work with me because I'm short or gay or live in New York City or don't live in New York City. But no matter who you are, there will always be a group of people who don't want to work with you. So why would I show up trying to be someone I'm not when even still at the end of the day, people aren't going to want to work with that version of myself. Why wouldn't I just show up being who I am so I can surround myself authentically with the people who want to work with me? And my job becomes really easy because I'm never lying.
Amen. That's great and good. Listen, guys, a huge, huge mantra or tenet of LFG energy is being what Tyler just said. It's authentic, unapologetically authentic, and being yourself. Tyler, one of the last questions I always ask guests is, and there's no right or wrong answer for this, but what does LFG energy mean to you?
So it's interesting. I've known you for quite some time now. Every time I see LFG, you're the only person that I can think of. So like quite literally, I know if you're listening, you can't see, but I have a high frequency lightning bolt on my index finger. And that was inspired by my muse, Jen Sincero, who I already spoke about. She talks about this power of high frequency and operating your life in the high frequency versus the low frequency. Both are free. One really starts to change your life because again, this idea of loss, full circle moment here, Arjun. It's like I do this for a living. Instead of saying this failure is defining me, I'm low frequency. Thank you so much for this opportunity to learn. I am now one no closer to a yes. And it costs the same. It doesn't change the fact that you failed, but it does put you in a mindset that makes your life more bearable and more joyous and allows you to set yourself up for success. So when I think of LFG, I think of high frequency. I think of living your life to the fullest potential because I deeply believe that every single human on this earth, no matter what you look like, no matter who you believe in, no matter who you love, that every single person innately has been given a God-given right to be happy and thrive and find their community. And that is my goal. And it just happens to be within the niche of real estate.
I love it. What a beautiful answer and a perfect way for us to end this. Tyler, you know I'm a huge fan of yours, and I appreciate you taking time out today to be with our community, with me, this audience, this show. And I can't wait to see you on the road and all the amazing things you're doing, and wish you the absolute best financially and physically in moving back to your home state of Texas.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Arjun. Always a pleasure. And I just love being in a room with you because of your energy. And I know you will continue to do great things.
You as well, brother. Love you, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you soon, brother.